Have you ever wondered what happens when a search and rescue team finds something they're not supposed to find? My name is Victoria Hensley. I've been leading SAR operations in the coastal mountain range of British Columbia for 11 years now. People think our job is simple. Someone gets lost. We go find them. We bring them home. But that's not always how it works. Sometimes we find things that make us wish we'd stayed at the station. Sometimes we're told to stop looking. And sometimes we learn that there are rules in the wilderness that have nothing to do with safety protocols or weather conditions. I'm going to tell you about something that happened during my time with the Squamish Valley SAR unit. It's something that changed how I see my job. It's something that still keeps me up at night. If you stick with me until the end, I'll tell you the exact rules we follow now. The ones that aren't written in any manual. The ones that keep us alive. I grew up in Squamish. My dad was a logger. My mom ran a small cafe on the highway. I spent my childhood hiking the trails around town. I knew those mountains like I knew my own bedroom. After high school, I got my wilderness first aid certification. Then I joined the local SAR team as a volunteer. I was 22 years old and thought I knew everything about the forest. Our unit covered a huge area. We handled everything from day hikers who twisted an ankle to climbers who got stuck on cliff faces. We worked with the RCMP. We coordinated with helicopter crews. We trained every month. We ran drills in all weather conditions. I was good at my job. Really good. By the time I was 30, I'd been promoted to team lead. My team was small but experienced. We had 12 core members. Everyone had their specialty. Some were trackers. Some were climbers. Some were medical experts. We trusted each other completely. We had to. In the mountains, hesitation can kill you just as fast as a fall. Most of our calls were routine. Lost hikers, injured climbers, the occasional teenager who wandered off from a camping group. We found most people within a few hours. Sometimes we found them in a day or two. Sometimes we didn't find them at all. That's just how it is in the wilderness. The forest doesn't always give back what it takes. I'm telling you all this because I want you to understand something. I'm not some conspiracy theorist. I'm not trying to scare you for views. I'm a professional with over a decade of experience. I've seen bears. I've seen cougars. I've pulled bodies out of ravines and off mountainsides. I know what's real and what's not. Or at least I thought I did. The credibility matters here. Because what I'm about to tell you sounds impossible. It sounds like something from a campfire story. But I need you to know that I'm trained to observe, to document, to stay calm under pressure. Everything I'm going to share with you actually happened. I have witnesses. I have records. I have the scars to prove it. Our station was located just outside Squamish. It was a simple building. Radio room, equipment storage, small kitchen, meeting room with maps covering every wall. We kept detailed logs of every call, every search, every outcome. Those logs go back 30 years. I'd read through most of them during slow shifts. I liked knowing the history. I liked understanding the patterns of where people got lost and why. Looking back now, I realize there were patterns I missed. Things in those old logs that should have caught my attention. But I was focused on the practical stuff. Weather patterns, common accident locations, the best routes for different terrain types. I wasn't looking for anomalies. I wasn't looking for the things that didn't make sense. That was my mistake. The first time I heard the term tall ones was on a Tuesday morning in late September. I'd been team lead for about 6 months. I was at the station early going through equipment inventory. Our radios needed new batteries. Some of the climbing rope was getting worn and needed to be replaced. Boring administrative work, but it had to be done. One of our veteran volunteers came in. His name was Robert Chen. He was 63 years old. He'd been with the unit for almost 20 years. He knew the mountains better than anyone. He was calm, reliable, not the type to joke around or exaggerate. When Robert talked, people listened. He poured himself coffee and sat down across from me. He looked tired. There were dark circles under his eyes. He stared at his cup for a long moment before speaking. "Vicky," he said, "I need to tell you something." I looked up from my clipboard. "What's going on?" He took a sip of coffee. "I'm retiring." I was surprised. Robert loved SR work. He'd never mentioned wanting to quit. "Is everything okay? Are you sick?" He shook his head. "No, I'm fine. I just think it's time." There was something in his voice. Something off. I put down my pen. "Robert, what's really going on?" He was quiet for a moment. Then he leaned forward. His voice dropped to almost a whisper. "How long have you been leading now?" 6 months. "And in that time, have you noticed anything strange? Anything that didn't add up?" I thought about it. "Strange how?" He studied my face. "Calls that got canceled for no reason. Searches that got called off too early. Areas we were told to avoid." I shrugged. "Sometimes the RCMP takes over. Sometimes family members request we stop. That's normal." "Is it?" he asked. "Normal?" I didn't know how to answer that. Robert stood up. He walked to the door and checked if anyone else was around. We were alone. He came back and sat down. "There are things you need to know. Things about this job that they don't put in the training manual. But I'm not the one who should tell you." "Then who should?" "Talk to Margaret," he said. "Margaret Reeves. She's retired now. I live in Britannia Beach. She was the unit lead before Tom. Before you. She'll explain everything. Tell her I sent you." "Explain what?" But Robert just shook his head. He finished his coffee. "I've said too much already. Just promise me you'll go see her. Soon." "Robert, you're scaring me." He smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. "Good. You should be scared. It means you're paying attention." He stood up and headed for the door. He paused with his hand on the handle. "One more thing. If you ever get a call about someone seeing something tall in the trees, someone who's confused or can't remember how they got somewhere, don't go looking. Not alone. And definitely not at night." Then he left. I sat there staring at my coffee cup. My hands were shaking slightly. I didn't understand what had just happened. Robert had always been so straightforward, so practical. This wasn't like him at all. I tried to focus on my inventory work, but my mind kept drifting. I thought about the searches we'd done in the past 6 months. Were there calls that got canceled? Yes, but that happens sometimes. Were there areas we avoided? Sure, but usually for good reasons. Avalanche danger, private property, terrain too dangerous to risk volunteer lives. But as I sat there, I started to remember little things. Small moments that seemed odd at the time, but I'd brushed aside. The way Tom, the previous lead, had marked certain areas on the map with small red dots. I'd asked him about them once. He'd said they were complicated zones and changed the subject. The time we'd gotten a call about a hiker who claimed to have seen something impossible, and the call was canceled before we even mobilized. The teenager we'd found last spring who couldn't remember 3 days of her trip and kept asking if they were still watching her. I'd assumed she was in shock. Hypothermia can cause confusion. So can dehydration. I hadn't questioned it further. Now I was questioning everything. I spent the rest of the morning distracted. I made mistakes on the inventory. I had to recount the medical supplies twice. Finally, around noon, I decided I couldn't wait. I needed answers. I needed to understand what Robert was trying to tell me. I grabbed my keys. Britannia Beach was only about 20 minutes north. I could be there and back before the afternoon briefing. I left a note saying I was checking on some equipment suppliers and headed out. The drive up the Sea to Sky Highway was beautiful like always. Mountains on one side, ocean on the other. The fall colors were just starting. Red and gold mixed with the dark green of the cedars and firs. It should have been peaceful. But my stomach was tight with anxiety. What was I going to find out? What had Robert been trying to warn me about? And why had he looked so frightened? I'd been doing this job for over a decade. I thought I knew everything there was to know about search and rescue in these mountains. But as I drove north with the October sun glinting off the water, I realized I might not know anything at all. I found Margaret's house easily. It was a small blue cottage near the old mining museum. The yard was neat, flowers still blooming in pots on the porch. I knocked on the door, waited, knocked again. An older woman opened the door. She was maybe 70, short gray hair, sharp blue eyes. She looked at me for a long moment. Then she sighed. "You're Victoria Hensley," she said. It wasn't a question. "Yes. Robert Chun told me to come see you." She nodded slowly. I was wondering when this would happen. "Come in." Her living room was cozy. Lots of books. Photos on the walls. Most of them were from the mountains. I recognized some of the locations. She gestured to a chair and I sat down. "Tea?" she asked. "No, thank you." She made herself a cup anyway. Then she sat across from me. "Robert's retiring, isn't he?" "Yes. He told me this morning." "Smart man." "He lasted longer than most." She took a sip of tea. "So what did he tell you?" "Not much. Just that I should talk to you. There are things I need to know." Margaret was quiet for a moment. She stared into her cup. "I was the unit lead for 12 years. Did you know that?" "I knew you were the lead. I didn't know for how long." 12 years. I loved that job. Best thing I ever did with my life." She looked up at me. "But it also taught me that the world isn't what we think it is. That there are things in those mountains that don't follow the rules we understand." My mouth felt dry. "What kind of things?" "Tell me something first. In your time as lead, have you ever gotten a call where the details didn't make sense? Where someone reported seeing something but couldn't describe it properly? Where the story had gaps that nobody could explain?" I thought about it. "Maybe. A few times." "And what did you do?" "We searched." "That's our job." She shook her head. "Did you find them?" "Sometimes." "And when you did, were they different?" "Confused." "Unable to remember parts of their experience." I remembered the teenager from last spring. The hiker who'd been found sitting on a trail with no memory of how she got there. The climber who'd insisted someone had been watching him from the trees but couldn't describe what he'd seen. "Yes," I said quietly. Margaret set down her tea. 7 years into my time as lead, we got a call. Father and son. They'd gone hiking near Mamquam Lake. The son called 911. Said his father had walked into the trees and hadn't come back. Said something had called to him. Called to him. That's what the son said. They were having lunch by the lake. The father suddenly stood up, stared at the tree line. The son asked what was wrong. The father said, "Do you hear that?" The son didn't hear anything. The father walked toward the trees. The son followed. But the father moved faster, started running. The son tried to keep up but lost sight of him within minutes. I leaned forward. "Did you find the father?" "We searched for 3 days. 20 volunteers. Dogs. Helicopter. Nothing. On the 4th day, a hiker found him. He was sitting on a log about 8 kilometers from where he'd disappeared. just sitting there, staring at nothing. Was he okay? Margaret's expression darkened. Physically, yes. Mentally, no. He couldn't remember anything after standing up from lunch. He had no idea how he got to where they found him. He kept asking about the tall people in the trees. Said they'd been so beautiful, so peaceful. Said they'd shown him things. My skin prickled. What things? He couldn't say. Or wouldn't. He was in the hospital for a week. When he came home, he wasn't the same. His family said he'd stare out the windows for hours, that he'd wake up screaming. 6 months later, he tried to go back into the forest. His wife found him on the trail. He was walking toward the trees, eyes blank. She had to physically drag him back to the car. I didn't know what to say. Margaret continued. That was my first real encounter with them, with what we eventually started calling the tall ones. But it wasn't the last. Over the next 5 years, we had 11 more cases with similar patterns. People who wandered off, who claimed something called to them, who were found miles away with no memory of how they got there, who talked about seeing tall figures in the trees. Did anyone ever see them clearly? Get a good description? No. That's the thing. Everyone who encountered them described something different. Some said they were impossibly tall, 10 feet, 12 feet. Some said they moved wrong, too smooth, too fast. Some said they couldn't focus on them properly, like trying to look at something in your peripheral vision. The moment you turned to look directly, it wasn't quite there anymore. I felt cold. What are they? I don't know. Nobody knows. We brought in forestry experts, wildlife biologists, even had an anthropologist come up from Vancouver once. Nobody had answers. The official explanation was always the same: hypothermia, dehydration, confusion, panic. But I'd been doing SAR for years. I knew what those things looked like. This was different. So what did you do? Margaret stood up. She walked to a bookshelf and pulled out an old binder. She brought it back and set it on the coffee table between us. I started keeping records, unofficial ones. Every case that had the pattern, every report mentioned something strange, every search that got called off for reasons that didn't quite add up. I opened the binder. Inside were pages of handwritten notes, dates, names, locations marked on photocopied maps, descriptions of what people had reported. There are patterns, Margaret said. Certain areas where it happens more often, certain times of year, certain conditions, and there are rules. Things that seem to make encounters more or less likely. Rules. Yes, things I learned through trial and error, through close calls, through losing people I cared about. Her voice cracked slightly. My assistant lead, David. He didn't believe me. I thought I was being paranoid. He went looking for a missing teenager in one of the red zones. Went at dusk. I went alone. We found him 2 days later. He was alive, but he never spoke again. Just stares. Like that father from Mamquam Lake. Like he saw something that broke something inside him. I felt sick. Margaret reached over and flipped to a page near the back of the binder. These are the rules I figured out. The things that keep you safe. The things you need to teach your team. I looked down at the page. There were 7 rules written in careful handwriting. But before I could read them, Margaret's phone rang. She picked it up. Hello. Her face changed. When? Where? She looked at me. I understand. Yes, she's here with me now. She hung up. That was the station. You need to get back. There's been a call. What kind of call? Hiker. Near Chicamas Lake. She's confused. Says she doesn't know how she got there. Says she saw something in the trees. Something tall. My blood ran cold. They're mobilizing your team right now, Margaret said. You need to go. I stood up. My legs felt weak. Margaret, what do I do? She grabbed my arm. Her grip was strong. Listen to me carefully. Do not search after dark. Do not go alone. And if anyone on your team says they hear something calling to them, you get them out immediately. Do you understand? I nodded. Take the binder, she said. Read the rules. Follow them exactly. Don't deviate. Don't think you know better. These rules were written in blood. I grabbed the binder. Started for the door. Victoria, Margaret called. I turned back. She looked older suddenly. Tired. Some people can't be saved. Remember that. Don't lose yourself trying to save someone who's already gone. I didn't know what she meant, but I didn't have time to ask. I ran to my truck and started driving back to Squamish. The binder sat on the passenger seat. I glanced at it at red lights. I tried to read the rules, but my hands were shaking too much. Something tall in the trees. Something that called to people. Something that took them and changed them. I pressed harder on the gas. My team was mobilizing. They didn't know. They didn't understand. I had to get there before someone did something stupid. Before someone went looking for something they shouldn't find. The mountains rose on either side of the highway. Beautiful and terrible. I'd spent my whole life in their shadow. I thought I knew them. But now they felt different. Like they were watching. Waiting. I was 20 minutes from the station. 20 minutes from whatever was waiting for us near Chicamas Lake. 20 minutes from learning whether Margaret's warnings were real, or just the paranoia of someone who'd been in the mountains too long. I hoped it was paranoia, but something told me it wasn't. I made it back to the station in 15 minutes. I might have broken a few speed limits. The parking lot was full. Our entire team was there, plus RCMP vehicles. A helicopter was being prepped at the airfield next door. I grabbed the binder and ran inside. Everyone was in the briefing room. Maps spread across the table. Radio chatter filling the air. My second-in-command, James Kowalski, looked up when I entered. There you are, he said. We've been trying to reach you. I had my phone on silent. What's the situation? James pointed to the map. Female hiker. I am 28 years old. My name's Amanda Priest. She called 911 about 40 minutes ago. She's near the north end of Chicamas Lake. Says she doesn't know how she got there. The last thing she remembers is setting up camp near the parking lot yesterday evening. Yesterday evening? I looked at the clock. It was 1 in the afternoon. She lost almost 20 hours? That's what she says. The dispatcher noted she sounded confused. Kept asking if they were still there. My stomach dropped. They? She wouldn't elaborate. Just kept repeating the question. James frowned. Are you okay? You look pale. I set the binder on the table. We need to talk. All of us. Before we go anywhere. Vicky, we don't have time for. Make time. My voice came out harder than I intended. Everyone. Gather around. The team looked confused, but they came closer. 12 faces. People I'd worked with for years. People I trusted. People whose lives were now my responsibility. I opened the binder to the rules page. My hands were still shaking. I need you all to listen carefully. What I'm about to tell you will sound insane, but I need you to trust me. What's going on? Asked Sarah Chun, one of our medics. I took a breath. There are things in these mountains that we don't understand. Things that can hurt us. Things that can take us. And there are rules we need to follow to stay safe. Someone laughed. I couldn't tell who. Is this a joke? No. I looked around the room. Robert Chun retired this morning. Before he left, he told me to speak with Margaret Reeves. I just came from her house. She was the unit lead before Tom. She kept records, unofficial ones, of cases that didn't make sense, of people who saw things they couldn't explain. What kind of things? James asked quietly. Tall figures in the trees, things that call to people, things that make them wander off, things that take their memories. I paused. This hiker, Amanda, she lost 20 hours. She's asking about them. This fits the pattern. The room was silent now. No one was laughing. Margaret gave me rules, I continued. 7 of them. She said they were written in blood, that they keep us safe. I'm going to read them to you now, and then we're going to follow them exactly. I looked down at the page. Margaret's handwriting was clear and precise. Rule 1. Never search alone in red zones. I pulled out the map from the binder. It was covered in small red dots. The Chicamas Lake area had 3 of them. These are areas where encounters have happened before. If we're searching in or near a red zone, we work in groups of 3 minimum. No exceptions. Rule 2. Do not search after sunset in red zones. If we can't find someone before dark, we camp and resume at dawn. We do not continue looking at night. Margaret says that's when they're most active. I could see doubt on some faces, but also fear. They were listening. Rule 3. If anyone hears something calling to them, they report it immediately and we extract them from the area. No investigating. No trying to identify the source. We leave. Rule 4. If anyone sees something tall in the trees, do not approach. Do not try to get a better look. Mark the location and back away slowly. Keep your eyes on your team members, not on what you saw. Rule 5. If someone goes missing during a search, we do not split up to find them. We stay together and call for additional support. We mark the last known location and we wait for backup. My voice was getting quieter. The next rules were worse. Rule 6. If we find someone who's been missing for more than 48 hours in a red zone, we approach with extreme caution. They may not be themselves anymore. They may try to lead us deeper into the forest. We extract them immediately and get them to medical professionals. Rule 7. If someone refuses to leave an area, if they insist on going deeper into the forest, if they become fixated on something we cannot see, we do not follow them. We restrain them if possible. If not possible, we mark the location and call for RCMP backup. We do not risk the entire team for one person. I closed the binder. The room was completely silent. Finally, James spoke. You're serious about this? Yes. You actually believe there's something out there? I don't know what's out there, I said honestly, but I know Margaret believed it. I know Robert believed it. I know they both had more experience than any of us. And I know this hiker's case fits the pattern exactly. Sarah raised her hand slightly. What happened to Margaret's assistant lead? David. I swallowed hard. He didn't follow the rules. He searched alone at dusk in a red zone. They found him 2 days later. He never spoke again. No one said anything. Look, I continued. I know this sounds crazy. Maybe it is crazy. Maybe there's a rational explanation for all of this. But right now we have a hiker who needs help. And we're going to help her. But we're going to do it safely. We're going to follow these rules. All of them. No arguments. And if someone doesn't want to follow them, asked Marcus, one of our trackers, then they stay here. I'm not forcing anyone to come. But if you come, you follow the rules. Understood. People looked at each other. Whispered. Finally, James nodded. Okay. We follow the rules. But Vicky, if this turns out to be nothing, then I'll look like an idiot and buy everyone drinks, I said. I can live with that. What about the RSMP? Sarah asked. Do they know about this? I hadn't thought about that. I'll brief them separately. For now, let's focus on the mission. We're going to Chicamas Lake. We're going to find Amanda. We're going to bring her back. We're doing it in groups of 3. We're doing it before dark. Questions. What if she doesn't want to come back? Someone asked. Then we follow Rule 7. We don't force it. We called for backup. James checked his watch. It's 1:15 now. The sun sets around 6:30. That gives us 5 hours. Then we better move fast, I said. The team started gathering gear. I pulled James aside. Do you think I'm crazy? He was quiet for a moment. I think you're scared. I think something happened this morning that changed your perspective. I don't know if I believe in monsters in the woods, but I believe in you. So we'll follow your rules. At least for today. Thank you. But Vicky? He looked serious. If we get out there and this is all in your head, we're going to have a problem. I know. He walked away to help with gear prep. I stood there holding Margaret's binder. The rules seemed simple on paper, but I had a feeling following them was going to be harder than I thought. The RCMP liaison came over. His name was Officer Brennan. Miss Hensley, can you brief me on your plan? I explained our approach, the rules, the 3-person teams, the sunset cutoff. He listened without interrupting. When I finished, he nodded slowly. I'm familiar with some of these protocols. I was surprised. You are? We have our own unofficial guidelines for certain areas, similar to what you've described. We don't talk about them publicly. But yes, I know what you're dealing with. So you've seen them? The tall ones? He didn't answer directly. I've seen enough to know your rules are smart. I'll make sure my officers follow the same protocols. And Miss Hensley, get your team out before dark. Whatever you do, don't stay out there after sunset. He walked away before I could ask more questions. So the RCMP knew. They had their own rules, their own experiences. This was bigger than I'd thought. This wasn't just SAR folklore. This was real. 20 minutes later, we were loaded into vehicles and heading toward Chicamas Lake. I rode with James and Sarah. The binder sat on my lap. I kept reading the rules over and over, trying to memorize them, trying to understand what we were walking into. Do you think she's okay? Sarah asked. The hiker. I don't know. Margaret said people who are found quickly usually recover. It's the ones who are out there for days who have problems. What kind of problems? I thought about the father at Mamquam Lake. The way he'd stared at nothing. The way he'd tried to go back into the forest. The kind that doesn't go away. We drove in silence after that. The mountains loomed around us. The trees pressed close to the road. Everything looked normal, beautiful even, but I couldn't shake the feeling that we were being watched. That something in those trees knew we were coming. That something was waiting. We reached the Chicamas Lake trailhead at 2 o'clock. The parking lot was nearly empty. Just Amanda's car and one other vehicle. The air was cool. Clouds were moving in from the west. James organized everyone into teams of 3. He put himself with Sarah and me. Marcus led another team. Our newest volunteer, Beth, led the third. Officer Brennan and 2 RCMP officers made up a 4th team. Amanda called from the north end of the lake, James said, pointing at the map. That's about 6 kilometers from here. Normal hiking time is 2 hours, but we don't know her condition. We stick together until we reach her location, I said. Then we assess. Remember the rules. Groups of 3 minimum. No one wanders off. Everyone nodded. We started up the trail. The forest was quiet. Too quiet. Usually you'd hear birds, squirrels, the rustle of small animals in the undergrowth. But today there was nothing. Just our footsteps on the trail and our breathing. Sarah noticed it too. Where are all the birds? Maybe there's a storm coming, James said. But he didn't sound convinced. We hiked for 40 minutes. The trail wound through dense forest. Cedar and hemlock towering overhead. The lake appeared on our left, dark and still. No wind. No ripples. Like glass. This doesn't feel right, Marcus radioed from behind us. Something's off. Stay alert, I replied. Keep your teams together. We continued on. The trail narrowed. Roots crossed the path. Branches hung low. I kept checking over my shoulder, making sure everyone was still there, making sure no one had stopped or wandered away. At 3:15, we heard a voice calling ahead. Help! Is someone there? That's her, James said. We picked up our pace. We found Amanda sitting on a log near the water's edge. She was wrapped in a silver emergency blanket. Her hiking boots were muddy. Her clothes were torn in places. She looked exhausted but uninjured. Sarah went to her immediately, started checking vitals. Amanda? I'm Sarah. We're search and rescue. Can you tell me how you're feeling? Amanda looked up. Her eyes were unfocused. I don't understand what happened. I don't remember. I was in the parking lot. I was setting up my tent. And then I was here. But it's the next day. How is it the next day? It's okay, Sarah said gently. You're safe now. We're going to get you out of here. I knelt down beside them. Amanda, I need to ask you some questions. Do you remember seeing anything unusual? Hearing anything? She shook her head, then stopped. Wait, there was something. Last night, before I lost time, I heard something. What did you hear? Singing or humming? I couldn't tell which. It was beautiful. It came from the trees. She pointed toward the forest behind us. I wanted to find it, to see what was making that sound. But then everything went dark. And when I woke up, I was here. My skin went cold. Rule 3. If anyone hears something calling to them, did you see anything? I asked carefully. Anyone? Amanda's expression changed, became distant. They were so tall, standing between the trees. I couldn't see them clearly, but I knew they were there, watching, waiting. Sarah caught my eye. I could see the fear in her face. Okay, I said, keeping my voice calm. We're leaving now. Sarah, can she walk? Physically, she seems fine. Blood pressure's normal. No signs of injury. But she's confused. Possibly in shock. We'll support her. Let's move. I stood up and radioed the other teams. We've found her. We're heading back. Everyone regroup at this location. The teams converged within minutes. Amanda stood with Sarah's help. She kept looking back at the trees. They're still there, she whispered. Can't you see them? Don't look, I told her. Just focus on the trail. Focus on getting home. We started back. I put Amanda in the middle of our group. James led. I followed behind Amanda and Sarah. The other teams surrounded us. No one spoke much. Everyone was tense. We'd been walking for maybe 10 minutes when Marcus radioed. Vicky, we have a problem. I stopped. What kind of problem? Beth. She's not responding. She's just standing there, staring at the trees. My heart sank. Where are you? About 20 meters behind you. East side of the trail. Everyone halt, I called out. Then to James. Stay with Amanda. Don't let her out of your sight. I jogged back down the trail with Officer Brennan. We found Marcus and his team clustered around Beth. She was standing off the trail, facing the forest, completely still. "Beth," I said carefully, "can you hear me?" She didn't respond. Her eyes were wide, fixed on something between the trees. "How long has she been like this?" Brennan asked. "Maybe a minute," Marcus said. "She just stopped walking, turned toward the trees. Won't answer when we call her name." I approached slowly. "Beth, look at me. Focus on my voice." Nothing. She just stood there, staring. I remembered Rule 4. If anyone sees something tall in the trees, do not approach. Do not try to get a better look. But Beth had already approached. She was fixated. This was Rule 5 territory now. Someone missing during a search. "We need to get her out of here," I said. "Marcus, take her left arm. I'll take her right. We're going to guide her back to the trail." We moved forward carefully. When we touched her arms, Beth flinched. But she didn't resist. We turned her away from the trees, started walking her back toward the group. "Do you see them?" she whispered suddenly. "They're so beautiful." "Don't look back," I told her. "Keep your eyes forward." "But they're calling. Can't you hear it?" "No, there's nothing there. Focus on walking." We got her back to the trail. Her eyes were starting to clear. The fixed stare was fading. "What happened?" she asked. "Why am I off the path?" "You stopped for a moment," Marcus said. "You're okay now." But I could see he didn't believe it. None of us did. I radioed James. "We're coming back. Pick up the pace. I want to be off this trail in the next hour." "Copy that." We regrouped and continued moving. Faster now. Beth stayed in the center with Amanda. Both of them kept glancing at the trees. Both of them looked scared. The forest felt different now. Oppressive. Like the trees were leaning in, watching. I kept counting heads, making sure everyone was still there, making sure no one else stopped to stare at something we couldn't see. At 4:30, we reached the parking lot. Everyone was accounted for. Everyone was safe. But nobody was relieved. Amanda was loaded into an ambulance. The paramedics would take her to the hospital in Squamish. I gave them my contact information, asked them to call if she said anything else, anything about what she'd seen or heard. Beth sat in one of our vehicles. Sarah was with her, checking her over, making sure she was okay. I pulled Marcus aside. "What exactly did you see?" When Beth stopped, he hesitated. "I'm not sure. For a second I thought I saw something. Movement between the trees. Something tall. But when I looked directly at it, nothing was there." "Did anyone else see it?" "I don't think so. Or if they did, they're not saying." Officer Brennan joined us. "Your rules saved us today. If we'd been out there after dark, if we'd split up to search, this could have been much worse." "It's not over," I said. Beth was affected, and Amanda clearly had an encounter. We need to follow up with both of them. "Agreed. I'll coordinate with the hospital. Make sure Amanda gets a psychological evaluation." The teams packed up gear. Everyone was quiet. The usual post-mission chatter was absent. People loaded equipment with mechanical efficiency. No one wanted to talk about what had happened. James came over to me. "I owe you an apology." "For what?" "For doubting you. For thinking the rules were paranoia." He looked back at the trailhead. "Something's out there. I don't know what, but something's out there." "Yeah," I said quietly. "Something is." We drove back to the station as the sun dropped toward the horizon. I watched the trees pass by, watched the shadows lengthen. Somewhere in those mountains, something was watching back. Something that called to people. Something that took their time and their memories. something that had almost taken Beth. Margaret's binder sat on my lap. I'd followed the rules. We'd gotten everyone out safely. But I knew this wasn't the end. This was just the beginning. Now that I knew what to look for, I was seeing the pattern everywhere. In old case files. In stories I dismissed as confusion or hypothermia. In the red zones marked on Margaret's map. The tall ones were real. And they were still out there. Still waiting. Still calling. And I had a terrible feeling they were just getting started. I didn't sleep that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Beth standing frozen by the trees. I saw Amanda's distant stare. I heard her whisper about things that were beautiful and terrible at the same time. 3 a.m, I gave up. Made coffee. Sat at my kitchen table with Margaret's binder spread out in front of me. I read every page, every case, every detail she documented over 12 years. The patterns were undeniable. 27 cases total, all in red zones. All involved people hearing or seeing something they couldn't properly explain. 15 were found within 24 hours and recovered mostly fine. 8 were found after 48 hours and never fully recovered, 4 were never found at all. Margaret had made notes in the margins. Observations. Theories. One note appeared multiple times. They're selective. They don't take everyone. Why? I didn't have an answer. Neither did she, apparently. My phone rang at 6. It was the hospital. Amanda had been awake most of the night. She kept asking for me. The nurse said she was agitated. Kept saying she needed to go back. That she'd left something important in the forest. Don't let her leave, I said. I'm coming now. I got dressed and drove to the hospital. The sun was just rising, pink and orange spreading across the sky. It should have been beautiful, but all I could think about was what might be watching from the mountains. Amanda was in a private room. An RCMP officer was stationed outside. Officer Brennan had taken this seriously. He was inside with her when I arrived. She's been asking for you, he said quietly. The doctors want to keep her for observation, but legally we can't hold her unless she's a danger to herself or others. Afraid I'll dream about them. The doctors can give you something to help you rest. Will it stop the dreams? I don't know. She closed her eyes. I can still hear them, even now. Faint, like they're calling from far away. Is that going to stop? I hope so, but I wasn't sure. And from the look on Brennan's face, neither was he. I left the hospital at 8. Drive straight to the station. The day shift was just arriving. James was already there. He looked as tired as I felt. Couldn't sleep either, he asked. No. You? I kept thinking about Beth. About how close we came. He poured coffee. I checked in with her this morning. She says she feels fine, but she's taking a few days off. Said she needs to process what happened. That's probably smart. Vicky, we need to talk to the team about what we're doing going forward, about whether we should be taking these calls at all. I've been thinking the same thing. Margaret handled it for 12 years. We can figure it out too. Margaret also lost people, and she eventually quit. She retired. That's different. Is it? James set down his coffee. Look, I'm not saying we should abandon our jobs, but we need protocols. Real ones. Written down. So everyone understands what we're dealing with. He was right. The rules Margaret gave me were a start, but we needed more. We needed a system. I spent the morning typing up a formal protocol document. I included Margaret's 7 rules, added procedures for each scenario, contact information for Officer Brennan and the RCMP liaison team, instructions for what to tell families, what to document, when to call off a search. At noon, I called a mandatory team meeting. Everyone came except Beth. 12 tired faces around the briefing table. I distributed copies of the protocol. This is now the official policy for our unit. I'm adding it to our training manual. Everyone will be required to read and sign off on it. Marcus raised his hand. What if someone refuses? What if they think this is crazy? Then they're off the team. I'm not risking anyone's life because they don't want to believe in something they can't explain. That seems extreme, someone said. David thought it was extreme too, I replied. Margaret's assistant. He didn't follow the rules. Now he can't speak, can't function. He's in a care facility in Vancouver. He'll be there for the rest of his life. I paused. If you think that's extreme, you're welcome to leave now. No one left. Good. Let's go through this section by section. We spent 2 hours reviewing every protocol, every scenario. I made them practice what to do if someone on their team became fixated, how to guide them away, how to break the trance without triggering panic. We reviewed the red zones on the map. I added 3 new ones based on Amanda's case and patterns I'd found in Margaret's notes. 14 red zones total now, covering maybe 20% of our search area. What do we tell people? Sarah asked. Families? Media? When someone asks why we won't search at night or why we're calling off a search, we tell them it's for safety, dangerous terrain, wildlife concerns, weather conditions. We don't mention the tall ones. We don't mention anything that can't be verified. The RCMP has agreed to back us up on this. So we lie. We protect people from information that would sound insane. Information they wouldn't believe anyway. I looked around the room. How many of you would have believed this a week ago? Before yesterday? Silence. Exactly. We do our jobs. We save who we can save. We follow the rules that keep us alive. Everything else is noise. The meeting ended at 2. People filed out slowly. Some looked relieved to have clear guidelines. Others looked scared. But everyone had signed the protocol. James stayed behind. You did good today. This was the right call. I hope so. You know what bothers me most? He said. It's not that these things exist. It's that they've apparently been out there the whole time. For years. Maybe decades. And we just didn't know. Or we didn't want to know. I thought about all the searches I'd been on. All the people we'd found confused and disoriented. All the cases I'd attributed to exposure or panic. How many did we miss? How many people did we find and send home without understanding what had really happened to them? Does it matter now? It matters to them, to their families. James picked up his coffee. We can't fix the past. We can only do better going forward. He was right, but it didn't make me feel better. I spent the rest of the afternoon updating our database, flagging old cases that matched the pattern, cross-referencing locations with Margaret's red zones. The more I dug, the more cases I found. Going back years. Some go back decades. One case from 1997 caught my attention. A group of 4 hikers. They'd gone into the backcountry near Brew Lake. Only 3 came back. The 4th, a man named Thomas Reed, had wandered away from camp in the middle of the night. The other hikers said he'd been acting strange all evening, staring at the trees, talking about listening to music. They'd searched for him for 3 days. Found nothing. The official report said he'd likely fallen and been covered by snow, but there was a note at the bottom, written by the lead investigator. Survivors report unusual circumstances. Recommend follow-up. There was no record of any follow-up. Thomas Reed had been 26 years old. He had a wife, a daughter who was only 2 years old. The newspaper articles about his disappearance mentioned them. showed photos of his wife crying. His daughter is too young to understand. I wondered if they were still alive, if they still wondered what had happened, if they'd spent 30 years not knowing. My phone buzzed. Text from Margaret. How did it go? I called her. We found the hiker. Amanda Priest. She's okay physically, but she's struggling mentally. That's normal. Takes time. She says she can still hear them, even in the hospital. Margaret was quiet for a moment. That happens sometimes. Usually it fades within a week. But she needs to stay away from the forest. If she goes back too soon, she might not come back at all. I told her. I promised we wouldn't let her return. Good. What about your team? I briefed them. Made it official policy. Everyone signed off. Will anyone quit? Not yet. They will. Some people can't handle it. Knowing that there are things out there we can't control or understand. It breaks something in them. I looked at the photo of Thomas Reed on my screen. Young. Smiling. No idea what was waiting for him in the mountains. Margaret, how did you do this for 12 years? How did you keep going? Because someone had to. Because if I didn't, more people would die. More families would lose someone they loved. She paused. And because I thought maybe eventually we'd figure out what they want. What they are. I never did. But I kept hoping. Do you still hope? No, she said quietly. Now I just hope people stay out of their territory. That's the best we can do. Avoid them. Follow the rules. Survive. We said goodbye. I sat in the empty station as afternoon turned to evening. The mountains were visible through the window, beautiful in the fading light. But I couldn't see them the same way anymore. They weren't just mountains. They were territory. Hunting grounds for something we didn't understand. Something that called to us. Something that took us. And I was responsible for leading people into that territory, for bringing them back alive. I thought about Rule 7. If someone refuses to leave, we don't follow them. We let them go. I wondered if I'd be able to do that. If I'd be able to watch someone walk into the trees and not try to save them. I hoped I'd never have to find out. 3 days passed. No calls. No incidents. The team was on edge. Everyone waiting for the next encounter. On Thursday morning, Beth came back to the station. She looked better. Color in her face. No more distant stare. But she was quiet. Thoughtful. I need to tell you something, she said. About what happened at the lake. We sat down in the empty briefing room. Just the two of us. I remember more now, she began. When I was staring at the trees. I wasn't just seeing something. I was hearing it too. A voice. It knew my name. My blood went cold. It spoke to you? Not exactly. It was more like the voice was inside my head. It said, Beth, come closer. We've been waiting for you. And I wanted to. So badly. Felt like coming home. Like finding something I'd been searching for my whole life. What stopped you? You. Marcus. When you touched my arm, it broke the connection. The voice stopped. And I realized I was standing off the trail. I didn't remember walking there. She looked at her hands. If you hadn't grabbed me, I would have kept going. I would have walked into those trees and never come back. You're safe now. Am I? She looked up. Because I still hear it sometimes. Late at night when everything's quiet. Faint. Like it's calling from far away. And part of me wants to answer. This was worse than Amanda's case. Beth was one of us. Trained. Experienced. And she was still being affected. You need to stay away from the red zones, I said. Maybe take a leave of absence. Go visit family. Get away from these mountains for a while. Running away won't help. The voice doesn't care where I am. She stood up. But I'm not going back into the field. Not until this stops. I won't risk becoming like David. Or worse. She left. I sat there feeling helpless. The tall ones weren't just taking people anymore. They were haunting them, calling to them even after they'd escaped. A week later, I drove back to Britannia Beach. Back to Margaret's house. I needed answers. Or at least someone who understood. She made tea. We sat in her living room like before. But everything felt different now. Heavier. Beth's still hearing them, I said. Amanda too. They're miles away from the forest and they can still hear the calling. Margaret nodded slowly. It happens. Not often. But it happens. They marked those two. Choose them for some reason. Choose them for what? I don't know. Maybe they were compatible somehow. Maybe they fit some criteria we don't understand. The pattern isn't clear. Is there anything we can do to help them? Time. Distance. Some people eventually stop hearing the voices. Others learn to live with it, to resist the pull. She sipped her tea. And some don't resist. They go back. They answer the call. What happens then? They disappear. Completely. We never find them. Not even bodies. I thought about Thomas Reed. About the 4 people in Margaret's notes who were never found. They're still out there. In the forest. Aren't they? Maybe. Or maybe they're somewhere else. Somewhere we can't follow. Margaret set down her cup. I stopped trying to understand years ago. Now I just try to keep people away. That's all we can do. It doesn't feel like enough. It's not. But that's all we have. I stayed another hour. We talked about protocols. About how to identify people who were most at risk. About warning signs that someone was losing the fight against the calling. When I left, the sun was setting. The ocean was dark. The mountains are darker still. Somewhere in those peaks something was waiting. Something patient. Something that had been there long before us and would be there long after. 2 weeks after the Chicamas Lake incident, I was closing up the station. Late evening. Everyone else had gone home. I was doing final checks. Making sure radios were charged. Equipment stored properly. That's when I heard it. Humming. Faint. Coming from outside. I froze. My hand on the radio. My heart is pounding. It was beautiful. Haunting. Like wind through trees. Like distant singing. Like something calling me home. I walked to the window. I looked out at the forest beyond the parking lot. The trees were dark. Swaying slightly in the breeze. Nothing unusual. Nothing visible. But the humming continued. Soft. Persistent. Patient. I realized I was walking toward the door. My hand on the handle. Ready to go outside. Ready to find the source of that sound. Then I stopped. Forced myself to step back. To remember the rules. To remember Beth standing frozen by the trees. Amanda lost for 20 hours. David who never spoke again. They'd marked me too. Choose me. And now they were calling. I grabbed my phone. Called James. I need you to come to the station. Now. What's wrong? Just come. Don't ask questions. He arrived 15 minutes later. Found me sitting at my desk. Hands gripping the edge. Eyes closed. Still hearing that distant humming. Vicky? What happened? I heard them. The tall ones. They're calling me. James went pale. Can you still hear it? Yes. Faint. But yes. He grabbed my arm. We're leaving. Now. You're coming to my place. You're not staying here alone. James. No arguments. Come on. He drove me to his house. Made me coffee. Sat with me until the humming finally faded. Until I could breathe normally again. You need to take time off, he said. Like Beth, get away from here. I can't. I'm the lead. The team needs you alive and sane. Not answering calls from things in the forest. He was right. I knew he was right. But I also knew something else. Something that scared me more than the calling. More than the tall ones themselves. Part of me had wanted to answer. Part of me had wanted to walk into those trees and find out what was waiting. What they wanted. What they were offering. That part of me was still there. Still listening. Still hoping to hear that beautiful, terrible humming again. I took 2 weeks leave. I drove to Vancouver. Stayed with my sister. I tried to pretend everything was normal. But every night, in that space between waking and sleeping, I heard them. Distant. Patient. Waiting. Amanda called me once. Said she'd checked herself into a psychiatric facility. Said the doctors didn't believe her, but at least she was safe there. At least she couldn't walk into the forest even if the calling got too strong. Beth texted. Said she'd moved to Calgary. Got a job in an office. Said she could still hear them but distance helped. Said she'd never go back to the mountains. I returned to Squamish after 2 weeks. Went back to work. Back to leading searches. Back to following the rules that kept us alive. But I am different now. I understood what Margaret had meant. Why she'd retired. Why Robert had quit. Why so many leads before me had eventually walked away. Because once they mark you, you're never free. You spend the rest of your life resisting. Fighting the pull. Knowing that somewhere in those mountains, something is waiting for you to finally give in. I still lead the SAR unit. Still train new volunteers. Still follow the 7 rules that Margaret gave me. But late at night, when everything is quiet, I hear them calling. Beautiful, patient, and terrible. And someday maybe I'll answer. But not today. Not today. If you work in search and rescue, if you spend time in remote forests, remember. Some people who go missing don't want to be found. Some are answering a call we can't hear. And if you ever hear singing in the trees, if you ever see something tall between the shadows, don't investigate. Don't go closer. Just turn around and walk away. Because they're always watching. Always waiting. Always calling. And they're very, very patient.